Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for your patience. Thank you all for coming tonight. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Nick Bernhardt, Treasurer and Board Member of the Foreign Correspondents Club, as well as owner and Managing Director of Kiatanan Consultants, a business intelligence market research firm. There have been historically two narratives with regards to the minimum wage. One, that the free market is best positioned to determine wages for low-skilled labor. And two, that low-skilled laborers are unable to negotiate and need regulators to set policies that enable fair pay and livable wages. There are many accompanying arguments to these two sides, such as the argument that minimum wage increases spur excessive inflation, cause job cuts, and put international companies at a competitive disadvantage, while alternatively that minimum wage increases are a response to inflation that already exists, raises the average wage of all workers in the long term, balancing out short-term employment changes, and that companies are forced to increase efficiency, becoming more competitive internationally by raising a country's technical skills and reputation. In Thailand, Pheu Thai pledged during last year's election campaign to increase Thailand's minimum wage from approximately 340 Thai baht per day to about 600 Thai baht per day. Could you bring the first slide up, please? So I've prepared just a simple slide here, which shows the minimum wages across the region for you to get an idea of where Thailand stands. And this is after the increase, which was the first step was planned to be this year to reach 400 Thai baht in early 2024, but this was pulled back to about 360 Thai baht per day, with promises of more to come later in the year. So this is at that approximately 360 Thai baht. What we've shown here is the maximum. So for example, this is for Thailand showing what's in Phuket, and then also the nationwide average, which you can see varies quite a bit depending on which country you're talking about. So Indonesia is probably the most extreme example there. But it does give you a good idea of where Thailand sits and how competitive it is. It's not, for example, going crazy with these increases. Even if it goes up to 600 Thai baht per day, we're not going to price ourselves out of competitiveness with Malaysia as a manufacturing base or anything like that. In fact, many of the increases are really more targeted towards migrant workers and those that are working in the tourist sector rather than manufacturing, which is where this argument is traditionally focused. So this populist form of politics is a well-trodden path for Pheu Thai, but they are, but the question is, are they outpacing the region, catching up, or leading a new charge? In terms of the most likely countries to compete with Thailand on the regional scale, you can see particularly Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, and where we stand there. Vietnam is increasing its minimum wage by around 6% this year, and so Thailand is in fact far behind that. Tonight we have brought three experts to the FCCT to speak about these issues in more detail and provide some insight into each side of the argument. They are Dr. Kiatanan Luankaew, Noah Shepherd, and Dr. Sustarum Thammaboosadee. So I will pass the presentation over to Dr. Kiatanan first to speak a bit about his experience as a lecturer at the Faculty of Economics at Thammasat University.
Thank you, Nick. I have to start by confessing that I was wrong. When I received the email, I read that I was going to the FTCC, that Franco-Thailand Commercial Council, so I was planning to do this in French. But actually, I'm coming for FCCT. Nice to meet you all. I will just bring you through some quick economic 101 and also discuss some empirical findings from the research and try to frame the discussion tonight based on this conceptual framework and empirical finding. So, academically speaking, in Labor Economic 101, we are not living in the perfect world. Whenever we talk about the functioning of the market, there will be people left out. But in a competitive market, there will be more people being left out, and those are the ones shown by statistics to earn less than the level that they should be earning to have a good quality of life. So to address that kind of labor market imperfection, and also to address some poverty issues that follow from the malfunctioning of the labor market in a way, to reduce poverty, to improve income distribution, minimum wage has been one of the most widely used instruments to address these issues. And there's theory and economics to support. Of course, if you are business people, you say, well, that's going to cost me a lot more, especially if you are SMEs in Thailand. Some SME, the cost of labor is about 70% of the cost of production. But then when you look at empirical findings in different settings, in the States, in Japan, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in other developing countries, they are consistent finding that what they form a theory based on the finding that is called efficiency wage theory, that when the wage is high enough, people will be more productive, either by feeling grateful to the higher wage or employee are forced to make them more productive. But either way, the result is that you can see correlation between higher wage and higher productivity. But what economists fail to address is the worsening working condition. They'll be forced to work harder under more stressful environment, and that could come. And in the long run, they would burn out and productivity will start to decline. That could happen. And they say, well, it reduces turnover and firm will save costs, so it's better to pay them more and keep them here than spending time and money finding new employees, because you have to spend time training them again and they might leave again, and that will be ongoing costs for you. Improve morale if you know that you can be here, you get a well-paid job, you can support your family, you are happy to work. Alternative economic approach is that, well, when you're workers, you have less bargaining power in the labor market. So we have to set up a body that would bargain on your behalf, and that would be a tripartite or maybe some kind of mechanism that would address this malfunctioning of the labor market. The other side that support minimum wage is to look at it from the aggregate level. For example, in Thailand, about 20% of Thai workers are drifting up and down around minimum wage level. So if we can increase the minimum wage level, that will increase aggregate demand. So there'll be more money for the people to spend, and that will stimulate the economy. And some people went so far as to use minimum wage policy during the economic recovery to stimulate demand. But it hasn't been that successful in that regard. Economic growth that result from higher productivity, that's the hypothesis, but no one has confirmed empirically that that was true. Just a few more slides, if you can bear with me. And there are talks about minimum wage and living wage. We have to set the tone for this. It depends on how we would like to put the debate. If we believe that people are entitled to a better quality of life, then we talk about living wage. It's the level of wage that would allow you and your family to live decently. And if you believe that minimum wage, the spirit of it is to somehow protect the labor and to ensure that they have a good quality of life, then it should be going towards living wage, and that will be the benchmark. And that's how the labor market policy is being discussed now. They set the level of living wage, desirable level of income that the family should have, and they see the minimum wage. And then they set the path of wage increase to eventually get there. And not too long, it could be 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years, but not more than that, and take into account inflation rate and cost of living along the way. If you people came from developed countries and you know that the cost of living there is higher, every year you get paid, you get some adjustment in your salary based on cost of living, and then you on top of that you get some bonus for your performance. That's the way they try to keep your standard of living at that level. So what I'm gonna, from now on when I talk about minimum wage, my point of view is that it should be going towards the living wage. I've talked through some of this, I will go through, but the concern is about people say, well, if you raise the minimum wage, the cost of living will be higher, things will get more expensive. There will be some pass-through effect. It is in some countries. It depends on how resilient your economy is, actually. If your economy is doing well, the pass-through will not be that strong, and the growth of income will be faster, and eventually everyone will be better off. But if your cost of living is going faster, or the pass-through effect is strong, then the cost of living will outpace the minimum wage. For example, in Thailand, there was this 300 baht minimum wage. And my research after the implementation of that wage in Bangkok, in the greater Bangkok area, it took around 24 months. And the real purchasing power of people were back to they were before the minimum wage hike at that time. So there's some kind of pass-through effect in Thailand, especially if the country's productive capacity cannot accommodate the change. And there was one thing, if you look at the Thai economy over the past 25 years, the share of manufacturing sector, agricultural sector, tourism sector, and the other sector remain almost constant. It means that we, Thai people, we expand our economy by working harder, not by changing the structure of the economy. And at some point, there will be a limit. When you talk about increasing minimum wage or getting to the living wage, what comes together is a transformative plan to change economic structure. I was in Malaysia when I was young. That was a long time ago, during Mahathir time. They were talking about economic restructuring, about at the same time as Thailand is Wawasan 2020. And they had a well laid out plan that they will reduce the agricultural sector, they will be less reliant even on manufacturing sector, and they put more on ICT, which was very new at that time. I was in Australia, and Kevin Rudd was talking about the same thing. We need to kill the manufacturing sector because it will be hard to transform Australian economy based on our competitiveness on the manufacturing sector. So he was looking at something else, and he made some deal with China to import manufacturing products to keep the cost of living low, and that he was able to maintain wage growth over time. So what I'm trying to say is that successful wage policy is not a single policy. It comes with a package. It has to be designed properly to accommodate all the challenges that come along the way. In Thailand, price pass-through is not based on cost only. There are examples when the government announced that, well, next year I'm going to increase salary of government officials. Prices start to increase. When there is news about minimum wage increase, price will start to increase before. That's what we call expectation in economics. So in Thailand, there must be a kind of mechanism apart from restructuring the economy to somehow reflect the true change in the cost of production. There are three aspects. I review about 20 papers that study minimum wage in developing countries around the world. Firstly, there is some employment effect. So people, the younger people and the elder people are the ones that are vulnerable to the wage increase. They will slow down employing more younger people, and they'll try to lay off people aged above 50 faster. I talked to Noah about the potential replacement by technology. It is not going to be that easy. Some of the business people or some of the academics were saying that, well, you do the wage hike at this time after COVID, where we are going to Industrial 4.0, and that will force firms in Thailand to transform to use more technology. There are about 3 million firms in Thailand. Most of them, 90% of 2.7 million firms are SMEs, and they're not capable of transforming it overnight. They would rather endure or change their business model to be less labor intensive, but they're not going to be moving up the ladder, especially when their liquidity constraint is worse. on average, when the economy was good, their liquidity reserve is enough for them to run the company for 90 days. But after COVID, until now, on average, from my survey, it's about 30 days. Still a long way to the initial stage. And if you increase the minimum wage at this time without proper support, this firm will be in a very undesirable position. Poverty reduction, it works only if your true income adjusting for the price hike keeps going faster than inflation level. And that's, I'm not sure it's going to be true. Otherwise, you will be just, better for a short period of time, 12 to 24 months, that's on average. But after that, you're back to the way you were. Lastly, there'll be some migration from people from formal to informal sector. People will be detached from social security, which Ajahn Sustarum would be talking about later on. And they'll be more vulnerable, especially if they run into some kind of laid off or even some kind of employment protection. Their job will be more risky, and that is not good when the economy is not doing well. And we know that for the next 3 years, it's not going to be a good economy in this country. From the world, there are some literature focusing on Asian countries, and basically, the results are consistent, as I said. So guidelines for setting minimum wages that should be implemented, recommended by the ILO, and a few of the research findings is that it should be adjusted at least to the cost of living. And that is not what happened in Thailand. Because they say, if you look at the statistic, inflation in Thailand in the past 10 years about 1 to 2%. It's very low. I should say stupidly low. Because we are when we talk about quality of life, what we should look at is not average inflation. It has to be a specific component called food inflation or daily inflation, where we only take into account the cost of living for people who live on daily basis. And on average, you multiply that by 2.5 or 3. So basically, the poor people are facing 4 to 5% annual inflation rate. Wage has to grow at that level. Lesser than that, it means that they're getting poorer over time. So when you use this kind of aggregate inflation data to adjust the wage growth, no wonder people are feeling poorer over time, because it's not the right way to target the minimum wage increase. So employment impact, there are ripple effect. You increase the minimum wage in one group of people in your company, you have to increase salary level of everyone in the company. So there'll be some ripple effect, there'll be some subsidy or some other mechanism to alleviate or at least mitigate that effect. And minimum wage should not be set by just a few officials. It has to be a social dialogue. What kind of society we would like to live in? If we want to live in a perfectly competitive world, then let the market be the guide. But if you believe that we are in the economy where we want people to be happy, you want people in the country to live a good quality of life, if that kind of social dialogue takes place and we get some kind of consensus, then we can use that kind of social agreement to put forth and transform the way we design minimum wage mechanism. Enforcement. There are loopholes, there are lessons to be learned from 300 minimum wage. People switch from having employee into something called job-based basis. There, for example, if you are employed 8 hours a day in a factory or 4 hours a day, you're qualified for 300 baht at that time. I was a consultant I was one of the council of the Ministry of Labor looking at the effect. And what we found is that some firm, they let people go. They take jobs to their home. So instead of employing them, they're outsourcing the same job to this kind of people, and they receive per piece price, and that's roughly 200 baht, 250 baht, not 300 baht on daily basis. So that could be something that's happening if the wage hikes happen too fast in an economy that is not desirable. It's quite a dilemma here, because when the economy is not doing well, that's when the time people need more money the most. but that is the most vulnerable time. So in macro level, if you would like to increase minimum wage, you have to have a policy of stimulating economic growth. It's 1.5 formula. For example, if you increase minimum wage by 3%, economic growth should be 4.5% to accommodate that kind of wage growth. So those are the mechanisms, and there are of course some M&E. If we use that in the context, in the Thai context, then first thing we have to do is to set a living wage level and try to close the gap. There are discussions about living wage level, but it never get into the meeting room where the three parties decide. They're talking about how much to increase per year based on inflation data, but not the desired level. So they do not have the goal of how much the minimum level that Thai workers should earn in order to live a decent life. If we miss that part, whatever wage increase there is, it's not going to work. And it has to be gradual. That's very important. There was a lesson in Indonesia 20 years ago where there was a wage hike and it was catastrophic, especially in the island far away from Jakarta. And the third lesson, this is very strongly recommended by the ILO and the World Bank, do not have equal minimum wage nationwide. If you use concept of living wage, you know that cost of living in different provinces in Thailand are different. You pay a lot in Phuket, but if you go to Nakhon Phanom, that's much cheaper. So equal minimum wage nationwide will create what we call reverse inequality. And this is very important. Reverse inequality means people, if you live in Nakhon Phanom and your wage is equal to Bangkok, the thing is there won't be many jobs for you in Nakhon Phanom. You have to move back to Bangkok to search for work. But as more people flock into the city, then bargaining power will go back to the employers. And then the actual wage will be lower than the minimum wage because people will be more inclined to accept jobs with less wage than minimum wage. And that's reverse inequality. Secondly, when the region loses human capital, its ability to grow over time will be lower. It means that disparity or geographical inequality will be worsening than what it is. That is why ILO and the World Bank recommended strongly do not have universal minimum wage nationwide. It has to be adjusted according to living wage of each province. So we have to combine these two concepts, enforcement and compliance. Of course, that's the problem in Thailand. We have that social dialogue. We haven't moved from employee perspective. We have to have a set of goals that what kind of country we would like to see in the future, and we design the wage mechanism, wage increase mechanism according to that kind of dialogue. We haven't had that kind of dialogue. That's why you see conflicts in every aspect in Thailand now. We never see eye to eye. We never have a chance to look together and decide what kind of country we are from now on. We haven't had that kind of dialogue. That's bad. Complementary policies, as I told you, you want to do minimum wage, that's fine. There, I have given a lot of interviews and reporters ask me, can we go for 800 bahts, 1,000 bahts? I say, you can go 2,000, 4,000, it's up to you, but look at complementary policies. What kind of policies should be in place to make sure that eventually the wage level will get there, and monitor, that's very important too, and learn from other countries. There are lessons to be learned about good policy and bad policy. There's some kind of some kind of impact evaluation mechanism that would reduce negative impact from that kind of wage hike. And there are some other lessons to be learned as well. But most importantly, it's time for Thailand to transform its economic structure. We can't live on 1:3:1 ratio. When I say 1:3:1 ratio, 30% of GDP of our country comes from manufacturing sector. But this 30% of value goes to just 10% of the population. And 10% of GDP is from agricultural sector. And that feeds into 30% of people. So you see, if we remain in the same structure of the economy, inequality is still a problem, and it will persist until the end of time. And this is very hard because we were running into this problem long time ago. About at the same time with Malaysia, we were short of people in labor-intensive industry. What Malaysian did was they decided to go for non-labor-intensive industry, but Thailand, we say, well, we're happy with this kind of factory setting, so let's import some migrants from Myanmar, from Cambodia, from Laos to supplement what we are missing. And by doing that, we are saying that we're going to be stepping at the same space. We are not going to change the productive structure of the country. It was okay back then, 15 years ago, but now we are facing competitive pressure from other countries. We're transforming. We were looking at Vietnam like they were far away, but now they're at par with us, and they will take over us, because when you see the way they transform their economic structure, it was rapid compared to Thailand. Our economy has been frozen for 25 years, structurally speaking. We have to do something about that. So disparity, and what I would like to point out is scale, scope, and scenario. When you implement a kind of economic policy, you have to understand the scale of increase, for example, the minimum wage. What kind of scale is desirable, and what kind of scale is acceptable by the economy? How much can the economy absorb the shock from that kind of policy? And scope, who would be the beneficiary from this kind of policy? And scenarios, what kind of situation are we in? Are we ready to transform ourselves to a more technology intensive industry or country or not, for example? So there are lessons that people say history repeats itself, but there is a saying in economics that this time is different, because there are economic historians that map out the change in economy from 600 years ago, and they spotted a break around 1995, and that indication says we are not going to be the same. The world is going to change, and by 2030, the speed of change will be 20 times faster than 20 years ago. Your job lifespan, if you were in the 1990s, about 30 to 40 years. So you and your father and your son will be doing the same job throughout their life. But today, job life expectancy of a job is 15 years. So basically, if you're lucky, you change careers in a job 2 times a year, 2 times in your lifetime. For example, I'm a lecturer. There won't be a job for me 15 years from now. So what I do, I will be a fortune teller, because I know how to calculate things. I use my skill. But by 2030, people will change job at least 4 times in their lifetime, minimum. That's the expectation. There'll be a big change. And we are going to have a different kind of conversation, then we better prepare for it now. So these are the background that I would like to lay out for the rest of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kiatanan. I'd like to pass the discussion over to Noah. Noah Shepherd is the managing partner at Shepherd Partnership, a firm advising manufacturing businesses in Thailand. So Noah, you have a lot of experience with manufacturers that employ low-skilled laborers. I'm curious, when setting up new manufacturing facilities, how much concern is placed on wages and the political climate that could lead to increases versus other concerns such as shipping and logistics? And if Pheu Thai succeeds in reaching 600 Thai baht per day, how do you think manufacturers, both current and potential, will react to that?
Yeah, thank you. I think I should look at, firstly, manufacturers, multinational companies coming into Thailand or wanting to invest in the region. It was interesting to see that chart that you put up before. Interesting that you didn't show China there. I think that would have been an interesting perspective. China, of course, nowadays is much higher than any of those countries that you showed, and it used to be the powerhouse of labor in the region, and that's changing a lot. The questions that I get asked by companies that are coming into Thailand are three main questions, not in this order. The first one is politics and stability of the country. Now we're going to have red shirts, yellow shirts, ducks, hands, bows, whatever. The second one is bureaucracy, and we tend to brush over that because it is a Southeast Asian bureaucratic system. It's pretty much the same in all of the other countries within the region. And you, sir, being the boss of this company, you're not going to be the one actually having to deal with this bureaucracy anyway, so please don't worry about that. And then they come on to the big question, which is, how about the labor rate? And the question that I ask them is, can we sit down and take a look at your P&L and see how much right now with wherever you're manufacturing, which tends to be in China, can we see how much of it is actually labor? And can we see how much of it is actually materials? And we're generally finding 70 to 80% is material costs, and 20% is the rest. And of the rest, about half of that is direct labor, with generally about 10%. And if you're taking 10% of your material, of your total cost, not what you're selling, but what your actual cost is, what is a 5% labor increase on 10%, and then you're marking it up anyway? The answer is, it's very, very small. But these are the questions that we talk to with people that are coming into the country. Now, for those that are here already, if I can give you a little anecdotal story of a firm that I worked for before, a multinational company. And of course, before I should say that, I'd say, to answer your question directly, what would firms here say if they were going to be faced with a 600 baht minimum wage? They'd throw their hands up in horror. We can't possibly afford this. We're going to be uncompetitive. We're going to be uncompetitive within the region. Are we? Maybe not. The anecdotal story that I would give was a badly performing business in Chachoengsao province with about 700 people that had a 14% turnover of employees. They were having accidents every month. They were having bad results at delivering their product to their customer, and they were having bad quality problems. And we looked at it, and one of the things that we agreed to do was to take everybody out of the minimum wage pocket and try and get everyone in the whole company to the 75th percentile in a big package that included engagement. It included a whole load of other things that I won't go into here because we're talking about minimum wage. But over a 2-year period, we reassessed everyone's job within the entire facility and brought everybody up and did a deal with everybody. And the results were that turnover dropped from 14% to 2.7%. Quality is the way manufacturing measures it, is in defects per million. They were looking at 2,500 parts per million defects before the change. That dropped to 75 parts per million. The safety dropped from 1 accident a month to no accidents, and they haven't had any since, and this was 10 years ago. The delivery to their customers, they were getting 80% of their products that were ordered by their customers were delivered on time. That went up to 98%. And cost saving year on year went between 5 and 8% overall. And this was after paying people more money. I mean, it was a complete turnaround of what the bosses in America were actually expecting. We then took it to the region where we had 26 factories. And we looked at the companies we benchmarked the minimum wage in each country, and we were in India, China, Taiwan, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, a couple of other countries in the region, I forget. We benchmarked the minimum labor within that country against what they were actually paying, and mapped that against the performance of safety, quality, delivery and cost. And it was a direct correlation that those that were paying the less relative to minimum wage were performing the worst. And that's the message I would come with. The industrialists will throw their hands up in horror and say we can't pay it. The reality is if you do it properly and you create a living wage for people, sure, people will work for you, they'll be happy to work for you, they will perform, they will be engaged, and you can turn the whole thing round.
Okay, thank you, Noah. Dr. Sustarum, I think it's safe to say that as an employee representative, Pheu Thai's announcements come as welcome news. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not actually introduce you properly. Dr. Sustarum is an employee representative on the Social Security Board. Also a supporter of the Move Forward Party as well. So, anyways, considering the large percent of migrant workers in construction, manufacturing, and tourism, how helpful are these promised increases going to be, or where could the biggest impact be made when it comes to improving quality of life for employees, both Thai and migrant? Also, is 600 Thai baht per day enough to create meaningful differences in these people's lives, or are bigger steps, either in terms of increases or different social measures, needed?
Okay, so thank you very much, Nick. I have noticed that I have been a speaker here 8 years ago. During on that time, we are under military government, Prayut Chan-o-cha on that time. The things that are very different once you compare Thaksin's government since 2001 and Prayut's government. The things that Thaksin Shinawatra have changed the landscape of Thai policy is that before his time, the politician can promise anything and you don't have to do. Okay, you can promise anything. But after Thaksin, the period of 2001 until 2006, he has changed the landscape, especially on the welfare policies. Even if during his younger sister time, Yingluck Shinawatra also have changed the landscape on the labor policy, which increased the minimum wage from 200 baht per day to 300 baht per day. And it takes just only 6 months or 1 year that is a universal minimum wage for 300 baht, which is increased for 50% in 1 year. And according to the research that Dr. Kiatanan has proposed before, yes, it's not the thing that has happened that we really fear that is going to happen. I call this is a specter of minimum wage. The specter of minimum wage that haunts Thailand. We always perceive that if we increase minimum wage, it will surge the cost of living, deter the foreign investment and fuel inflation. It's not really happen, even if we have increased for 50% 10 years ago. Okay, so that means in reality it is far from the alarming that we have fear. For example, if we increase just only 10% of minimum wage, the real cost of production will increase just only 1%. Yes, once we focus on the macro scale of minimum wage, so that means if you increase the minimum wage, it's not really affect all sector. For example, tourist sector, tourism sector, and also once you focus on people in Bangkok or in Rayong, they earn more than minimum wage already. Okay, let's back to Pheu Thai policy. It's really disappointing because during the political campaign, we also expect that, that it's a very high competition on labor policy and welfare policy between Move Forward Party and Pheu Thai Party. And they are two biggest popular party. And so that means as a welfare state campaigner, I'm really happy on that. And I suppose that no matter that Pheu Thai or Move Forward Party become Prime Minister, we will get something that better than now. Okay, but once Pheu Thai Party decide to align themselves with authoritarian wings, so that means even if the thing that they have promised, the minimum wage, never been introduced. And last week, you will see that it's the first time that the minimum wage has been increased by the district area. I never see this before, okay? In the previous time, it has been increased by the province. Now it has been separated into the sector and separated into the district area. So this is the problem. So that means in the term of policy campaigning, we back into 1980s. So that means the politician can promise anything and they are not obligated to do this. Okay. According to Mr. Pipat, Ministry of Labor Affairs, and he is not the first minister who said that if you increase minimum wage, Thai people will not benefit. Just only immigrant workers from Cambodia, from Myanmar, from Laos will get the benefit from increasing minimum wage. But Dr. Kiatanan also point on this point, but I want to emphasize again. According to the data of Dr. Kiatanan, there are 10 to 20% of our workforce that stay below, up and down on minimum wage. Okay, so that means you are talking about 3 or 4 million people in their working age, 18 years old to 60 years old, that probably to earn less than 10,000 baht a month. So that means increasing minimum wage is not a policy that just only benefit immigrant workers anymore. You are talking about 3 million people, 3 or 4 million people. So it's almost 60% of population in Finland, right? And once you're talking about this kind of policy, now government trying to talking about digital wallet, how they benefit the people. They're talking about the soft power policies that going to benefit 100,000 people. But they increased minimum wage for 2 baht last year. Okay, so that means that is the problem. We still need some more minimum wage. Okay, and according to Dr. Grisada Thirakosornpong research, a new research trying to publish and say that what is the proper living wage in Thailand. And he suggests that it should be 1,000 baht per day. 1,000 baht per day or 30,000 baht per month. It sounds very big amount of money, but now I ask my students who are 18 or 19 years old and ask them that can they live by their own, buying 3 meals, paying for their accommodation, their own transportation for 30,000 baht a month. Can they live? And you know that not just only in Thammasat University, even if we're talking about the students from northeastern part of Thailand, southern part of Thailand, they say that 20 or 30,000 baht is not enough if they have to pay everything for themselves. Okay, and if we compare with the other countries which have almost the same size of economy, same cost of living, for example in Taiwan, in Taipei, the minimum wage is 30,000. It's around 30,000 baht a month. Almost the same cost of living in Taipei, but they earn 3 times higher compared to the people who work in industrial area in Bangkok or in the eastern part of Thailand. Okay, so, but the things that I want to emphasize, minimum wage alone is not enough. Okay, it's not enough. We really need some new Labor Protection Act, and if you follow the news last month, one of the most progressive Labor Protection Act also has been rejected in Parliament. The goal is just only to decrease the working hour from 48 hours per week, according to Thai labor laws nowadays. This law want to decrease to 40 hours a week, but it has been rejected by Pheu Thai party. So it's a very big problem. So that means more than minimum legal wage. We also need a Labor Protection Act that changing the perception of what is the labor. And nowadays you will see that there are some platform companies that trying to making some kind of exploitation under the fake word as a partnership. You will see that you have a rider who is working on platform economy. They have their own motorbike. They have to buying their own energy, buying their own gas, risk themselves in the road. But they can earn maybe just about 300 or 400 baht a day, and working for just only 15 hours a day. So that means it's against to the Labor Act now. But Thai government seem to close their eye for one side and say that it's really good for economy to support this kind of platform economy. Okay, and the other things more than the minimum wage, we also have to talking about Labor Relations Act. So that nowadays we are really difficult to join and start our own trade union. We have to ask the permission from the Ministry of Labor that can we start this trade union. And if we have the trade union, and if we want to strike or organize any kind of strike, empathy strike, general strike, you also have to ask for permission first. I mean, that's a big problem. I can remember 2 years ago during the uprising in Bangkok, myself, I just only say that, just interview and post on my Facebook and say that one of the most peaceful way is general strike. It is my suggestion, but for myself, I also have been sued by the conservative lawyers that I'm doing something that affect to the state security by saying that general strike is one solution of the conflict, one method that we can solve the conflict in our society. Okay, so this is my first round, and I'm trying to say that we have a very big disappointment on Pheu Thai party. Trace back 20 years ago, we used to believe that this party is a new goal, that if you have promised something during election, you must have done something. But nowadays it has been changed. Yes, we have to looking forward for something that really more than minimum wage. We need new Labor Act, Labor Relations Act as well. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy that you brought up the subject of gig economy workers, where you're talking about delivery drivers, grab riders, and these kinds of things. This is something that actually my company has also done some research on, and I've identified as a very, very large risk for investors looking at these companies. And I'm curious what you two would like to add as well. If you have any thoughts on how the world is changing with these kinds of, new formats for labor, and how that's going to change the economics of policy setting.
I think The problem with us is that our antitrust law, anti-competition law is not up to date. We are facing an increasing role platform economy, but the law we use is drafted 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and even simple online fraud ran into problem when you want to sue them. And that's not what should be happening. Now we're promoting digital economy, but we can't have a proper labor law to protect them. People cannot be on strike, and people who are working for this delivery company, they are not well protected. And this company can charge them a lot. They get a lot of deduction, and they don't have a say. They try to organize things many times, if you follow the news, and they're still running into the hard time. This kind of economy is not sustainable. It can stimulate some economic growth. In economic, empirical finding in economics says you can have some kind of monopoly power in the economy. It will help the economy to grow to a certain point. For example, in Japan, there was this keiretsu. In Korea, there was this chaebol at some point in time. But after that, you have to let competitive pressure run its course, and you have to increase more protection for the people. But we are not there yet, and we are having, what should I say, three-tier economy. You get advanced economy in Bangkok, you go to EEC, you get some factory which is about industry 3.0 to 2.0. You just drive further in Chonburi to certain sub-province, sub-district, you still see paddy field. So it is not a complete transformation, but the law that was set to run the country, economically speaking, was set in the age of Industrial 2.0 and 3.0. That is the problem, and that was the legal infrastructure that I'm quite concerned with, because my recent research is about this competitive pressure and how the mismatch between regulation and the current state of economy stop us from growing further. I think Sustarum, maybe you may have something to add.
Yes. So in my point of view, there's a problem of the law regulation by themselves. You see that there are some German company. For example, it's a pink German company. In Germany, they call the people who work with them as a worker. Okay, in Germany. But once this company come to Thailand and they are doing a joint investment and they change the name, but yes, it will be a pink company. But they do not call the people who work with them as a worker anymore. They call them a partner. How can they become a partner? They have no share in the company, and they cannot working or adjust with the algorithm. They are worker. Their worker work with them, work for 15 hours a day in the motorbike, and in one day they will set a new algorithm, and they have to work harder again. They are absolutely worker. So I mean that if this the problem of the law regulation in Thailand is not really the problem in the term of technique that we don't understand the algorithm, do not understand how the labor relations has been changed, because these people, according to one research, they cannot shift from the one platform company to the other platform company. Basically, they work for just only one platform. Maybe the Guyman, Food Panda, Grab. Yes, they have to work for one. It's not very easy for them to change. But the problem is that why our Ministry of Labor, this act, we can call this, is a employer and employee relation, and it should be protected by the labor law. But it's again like that I have proposed before. They are too big to be fair, and we also have been very exciting about what to say, the new unicorn of Asia, the new platform economy has been started, we have to be excited for them. It's a new kind of the mode of capital accumulation. But the fact is that, what to say, the quality of life of the worker in platform economy is seem to be decreased, and I suppose that it was then the period of 1970s that we have the big uprising in 1973, and we have the first Labor Law Act, and the quality of people seem to be better than the people who work with the platform economy nowadays. So I think the problem of law regulation is something that we also have to mention as well. Okay.
Thank you. Noah, would you like to add any comments on this subject?
I can't comment anything legally about the gig economy because I'm not qualified to. I would just like to mention one thing though, and it was interesting to see. Of course, we've had it here in Thailand and in this region for a long time. I mean, your motorbike taxi drivers at the end of the soi, they've been a landmark for forever. The pandemic really seemed to make this very popular, where we all had to stay at home, and it was very nice to have these people coming dressed in green to come and bring things to our homes. It was awfully wonderful and convenient, and I wonder whether it would have taken off as it has done without the pandemic. But clearly these are underpaid people, they are exploited people, and something needs to be done about it.
Okay, thank you. I would like to open the floor to questions now, if anybody has any they would like to ask our panel. There's a mic at the back, just where the step up is, and I'll give you guys a minute. If not, I have a few more questions myself. Please just introduce yourself as well, and if you have any particular panelists that you'd like to address the question to please mention them.
No.
No mic for you.
I forgot the question now. Peter Trainer, club member. Just a general question for the panel. You've referred to the need for a planned economy and how other countries have shifted from agriculture to high tech. To do that in Thailand, you have to improve the education system, because Thailand ranks at the bottom of all the measures for the education in Southeast Asian countries. To change the education, there has to be a policy decision by the government. There has to be a positive change. The minimum wage is a result of the companies in Thailand and the monopoly system and the business system that exists. It works for the bosses, for the owners, for the manufacturers. It's been established by them, and they want to keep the minimum wage low, and they don't have any incentive to change the status quo. They don't want to change anything. And if they don't want to change it, there's no incentive to change the educational system, which would lead to a change. So the question to the panel is, where does the drive, where does the momentum come? We've had 10 years of a military government which wasn't run by economists or anyone who knew about the education system or the economy system. So they had no incentive to change anything. We have in theory, a political government now who have access to economists and specialists, but where will the momentum come for any government, either Pheu Thai or move forward, to change the grassroots education system and then change the employment system?
Nick, may I?
Yes,
Be the
please.
First one? Let me give you some figure. There was a survey called Human Capital Index about 3 years ago, and I found this alarming figure. In Thailand, only about 14% of our workforce are ready for the new kind of economy. On average, in Germany, in Singapore, in other developed countries, roughly around 50% of the workforce are ready for the new economy. So we are way behind in terms of number of people. And to change education system is difficult, as you mentioned, that's true. There is no incentive for them to change. And the grassroots movement is difficult. One thing is because of population structure. Let me give you some further figures. About 70% of households in agricultural sector, head of the household now age above 55. They're quite old, and their average year of education is around Matayom 3. They're old, they are not educated, and they are short-sighted in terms of, they cannot see further. When people are short of liquidity, do not expect them to do long-term planning. They have to do daily business. They have to plan on daily basis. In this kind of economic setting, it's difficult for them to see forward, and grassroots movement is difficult. So I think the only change that will happen in time when our population structure change. We'll see more hardships, but people start more questions to the way the country is being run. We see conflicts now from the younger generation to the older generation. And this conflict, I think, will go on for the next 10 or 15 years. But I hope it will be a constructive one. And this kind of dialogue, if it happens in a proper way, they might create another grassroots movement. But that's all the hope. And I think what I can do now is to pray and hope for the better. That's all. Otherwise, I will be so pessimistic and I will be so down.
If I can add to that, there was a World Bank report that came out a couple of months ago that mentioned the fertility rate in Thailand is 1.1%. That means that by the end of the century, this country will drop from current rate of population of 72 million to 44.5 million. And by 2050, which is only 25 years away, the 65 and up will increase by 13%. And I think taking that point about what are we going to do about the education, I think that this is far more of a serious driver than education, because the markets will then take over as you have a much smaller potential working population, and that will have to drive up the minimum wage, the living wage, whatever the wage is, because a person's hands will become a real asset, because there will be that many less of them.
Okay. I just a brief add on education. Last year, I went to Mahasarakham University. So you know that it's a public university, and faculty of political science, there are 10,000 of the students that enroll in Mahasarakham University. So it's just the choice from Isan region students who do not have enough money even to go to study in Ramkhamhaeng. So they went to Mahasarakham University, and I doing in the lecture in the big hall room. There are about 1,000 students, faculty of political science. I asked them that who taking student loan. You know that 80% of them taking student loan. And I asked that in your 80% that raise your hand that taking student loan, how many of you that your parents also taking loan from agricultural bank? All of them. So that means their parents are under the debt by being farmer. And only their hope is that send their children to study in university, but they have no money. They have to taking the loan, and after 2 years, they will under the debt for 300,000 baht. So it's a big amount of money compared to Thai minimum wage. 300,000 baht, you have to take almost a whole life to pay back for the debt that you have taken for 4 years. The fact is that to making university become free in Thailand, you have to use just only $1 billion US. Just only $1 billion US to making free education in the university level for 2 million Thai students. It's almost the same price of one submarine. If you don't buy one submarine, you can making university free for 2 million students. So yes, I agree that we need some political intensive, and we really have the new hope with our younger generation. The point is that they are not clever or have more statistics or open to more academic levels. But the things that I have noticed in 2020, the newer generation, it is the things that are going to change Thai society. They can feel the pain of the other people. I asked Thammasat students who are relatively rich from the upper middle class. I asked them that, what do you think about student debt? They say that we should forgive all of the student loan, even if they are not going to taking the loan, but they can feel the pain of the people. 10 years ago, if you were asking about increasing parental leave or pregnancy leave for the women, you know that many of men or women will reject to this proposal. But nowadays, it seems that more people feeling the pain of the people. And yes, we are the first in Southeast Asia that we have a same-sex marriage law. And it seems that more people seem to support. So that means it is a key point of change. We have more young people who feeling the pain of the people, of the other people. I think this is a beacon of the hope that we have for the future. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, actually, my voice carries.
Great.
I was just going to go along the same line. Two of you are professors, I assume. And I was wondering, what are students talking about? It's like, it was about the question of change and where does it come from? And you were getting at that. That's why I sat down. But but then with a very traditional authoritarian educational system, it doesn't encourage thinking. But anyway, what are students talking about these things? Are they concerned about how the structures of society are? You know, what do students talk about? Do they talk about this at all?
I'll let you have the floor first for this one.
You know that once we're talking about Gen Z and we read the article, Gen Z is we are something that very negative for Gen X, Gen Y, and Boomer. Everything we always blame to Gen Z that they are problem maker, cannot work with us. But there are many things that I really want to emphasize. There are many positive things that really happen. So that means there are access to more information. So that means they are not really believe to me, even if I'm PhD, I'm professor, they criticize me. They do not believe me. And they say that the things that I used to believe, the thing that I used to campaign, it happened yesterday. So that means for me, as an academic and as a social activist, most of my life I witnessed the failure scenario. Okay, I'm not really witness some victory scenarios and most of failure. But the good things is that my students always say that your failure is yours and it happened yesterday. So for that generation, they will say that, okay, I will try the new thing. Even if people will not understand and they will believe that maybe everything will be changed just only in 1 week. Maybe someone who really disagree with you this week, in that generation, in their perception, they say that maybe next week they will understand. But for our generation, if someone disagree with us, we witness some kind of failure, okay? We have to give up, change, and become broken heart activists, something like that. But it's not going to happen to the newer generation. I think this is a good thing. But to be honest, there's something that really difficult to working with the newer generation. Yes, there's something that very difficult, but we have to try to understand them. And I think they have trying very hard to understand us as well. Okay.
Just add to his point, we have pre-education reform in Thailand in the past, in the past 100 years. And there was one reform that started in 1982 and was slowly being implemented until 2000. And after 2000, there was this small change that led to unintended consequence for the conservative people. They put the word critical thinking into the curriculum. They allow students to ask questions. And that was just a catchword, but somehow it gets carried away by parents and some teachers, and there are more masses of younger generation who dare to ask questions. But and that was the starting point, because I was thinking about the same thing you asked. What did all this come from? Suddenly we have new generation that are asking critical questions that younger generation under authoritarian education scheme never asked. And it was around that time that there were Ministry of Education, thank God, accidentally promote this word just to have a catchy word in education system to follow international standard, but somehow it got implemented in a proper way, and this generation is now 20 to 22 years old. Those were the first wave that passed through this kind of new curriculum. And my son, when we came back to Thailand in 2011, that was a big flood. He had a hard time adjusting to the school here. He grew up in Australia, and then we went to France, to Germany, and to Japan before we came to Thailand. And I had to move him 9 times, because the last one was the biggest showdown. He was sitting for an exam on Buddhist religion, Introduction to Buddhist Religion, and he refused to answer the question in the final exam. And I got a call from the school that your son refused to answer the questions. I had to cancel my class a bit early, and from Thammasat I ran straight to the classroom and asked what happened. And my son looked at me and said, I'm not going to put myself into this kind of evaluation. And what happened? He gave me the questions, and it was about nirvana, concept of nirvana. But then what was being asked of him was, do you remember the name of the tree that Lord Buddha sat when he found nirvana? And he was wondering, and he asked this question to his teacher who was responsible for the course, and she got mad. And she said that my son was disobedient. So I told her that, look, we are quitting. Let's go. And I quit that school at that time. So I could see the pressure. He was having a hard time adjusting to the traditional Thai environmental education system, and the younger generation are feeling the same thing now. So I could see their pain. They are more sentimental, yes, but I think we can benefit more if different generation can sit down and talk. If you follow the news, there are news about Luankaew and Thammasat's football match, and there are some disagreements. We could turn this into an opportunity to promote better understanding if we do it the proper way. there are so many opportunities along the way to open up the dialogue. And I had that in my class. My students, I teach Thai economy, and sometimes I teach contemporary economic issues. When students came to my class, the very first thing they search is my Facebook and search back to my history. And then they ask me, are you a Slim? The yellow shirt, and I say, yes, I am a full-fledged yellow shirt, and I'm so bloody red shirt and orange shirt as well. I wear all kinds of shirts here, and they don't understand because we have lecturers who are quite, quite strong in their political inclination. But for me, I think different angles of the society has to be explored. You have to be, as a lecturer, you're responsible for all the students there, so you have to be open-minded. I respect King Rama IX, but I also like some policies from the Future Forward Party, Pheu Thai Party. So I'm a kind of mix, and I think that we have to have this kind of mindset to start a dialogue. If you look back at the history of different countries, social progress start with proper dialogue. We don't have that, and if we don't have that, we don't have a good proper minimum wage, and we don't have that kind of social capital that will move the country forward, and that's bad, and that's a very sad news for the country.
Okay, thank you all for the comments on education. It is absolutely extremely important, and I have in my notes as well this issue of whether or not Thailand should even be chasing minimum wage kind of work and business, or if it should be focusing more on tech fields and these other things. So I'm glad we touched on that. I'd like to ask a question to refocus on the regional issue. And I suppose this is really, should Thailand be trying to compete with players like Indonesia and the Philippines? And Noah, perhaps you're the best person to answer this. Should it be trying to steal business from its regional partners, or rather, as China is the one that everyone is, considering moving manufacturing out of right now, is there something that the region can do on the whole to attract more business to the region and be that rising tide that lifts all ships?
Yeah, I think that one of the problems, if you like, that we've had is we've had this Southeast Asian China powerhouse of manufacturing that then sends stuff to the West. And I think I question whether that is sustainable in the long term. I mean, within the region itself, we have a huge market. What is it? 4 billion people within 5 hours plane ride from Bangkok, or something like that. It's the market itself within the region is huge and is growing and has great potential. And I think to compete against Indonesia, Philippines, and everything else to make stuff to send to America is really not the way forward, when we should be looking at what's actually on our doorstep in terms of what we can produce and sell regionally and within the country to grow the economy domestically as well.
I agree with Noah. Actually, we are part of the regional global supply chain, so our economic strategy should be shifted to being a good partner and promote, collaboration between countries in Southeast Asia. The automobile industry is doing that at the moment.
Okay, and the things that I want to add is that maybe we have to avoid the scenario which is called race to the bottom, the things that we have done for several decades, trying to attractive the investment by the gold weight. So that means if we trying to working together in our region and trying to develop the infrastructure, education system, the welfare structure, I think it's also become the new solution for regional cooperation as well. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And one final question for everybody. Unless there are more from the floor, please just go to the mic. Oh, please.
Hello, hi, I'm Sumi from UNSCAP. I'm curious to know, so we all understand that education is important to enhance, the whole of society. But I'm quite curious to understand, so what happens after these students graduate? Are there quality jobs that pay well for them to then develop their careers into? And what are some of the efforts that are being made by the Thailand government to ensure that there is a home growth of industries, of companies that are able to provide that good quality jobs to university graduates? It could be homegrown, there could be some efforts made to ensure that there is more foreign investment that also seeks to ensure that that knowledge also gets penetrated into the domestic economy. So any type of insight on what Thailand government is doing to help build up that supply of good quality jobs would be very interesting. Thank you.
As a labor economist, I am very happy to say that in a sarcastic way, I have done some research on skill gaps in Thailand about 2 years ago. 1/3 of our newly graduate has huge skill gap that is not acceptable by the labor market. And also about 1/4 of our graduate earns the same level as if they did not go to university, less than 9,000 baht a month. So it all happened when we have the student loans fund in 1996. It's a long history, and that fund was intended to give opportunity, give access to the students who go to university without having to sell their assets. I talked to the designer of this scheme, and he said that he made a mistake. He didn't know that Thailand would be so innovative in a sarcastic way as well. Adrian Seiderman, I met him. He was the architect of the Thai Student Loan Fund. He said that, well, in a normal country, when you have this kind of student loan, students will choose to go to university according to their ability, and they do some search about the demand of the labor market, and university would increase the seats according to the market demand. That is what happened in other countries that he works with. And he said Thailand was very unique, and he said his face went down. He said, I never knew Thai university would be so innovative. You could increase the seats overnight. So by 2 years after the implementation of the student loan fund, many Rajapat University and other public university, they get financed by tuition fee, and student loans are available for almost everyone. So they see customers. What they do is, instead of increasing seats in science and technology departments, they increase seats in political science, as Ajahn Sustarum mentioned, and other that could be easily increased. So we are not listening to the demand of the market. University are incentivized by income from the students, not by the market. So they don't care about whether the quality of the graduates meets the requirement, and they don't care about the demand of the labor market. We need science and we need to produce at least out of 3 graduates, 1 has to be in science and technology at that time, but 7 out of 10 are from social science and humanities. So that kind of mismatch over time caused a problem in labor market. We are facing problem of skill gaps, severely facing problem of skill gap. There was a survey by Ministry of Labor consistently before COVID, and roughly about 65% of the firms said they were trying to employ someone with university degree for longer than 6 months, and their people apply for the job, but they could not take these people because the skill they have is lower than the minimum requirement for them to do the job properly, they opted for people with vocational degree and spend about 6 months training them intensively. And these people, of course, they pay less for them, but they are up to the level that would be satisfactory for the position. And that runs on until today. My current research on under education, I mean, you study a lot, and when you work, you're not working at the level of your education. But 1/4 of graduates still suffer from that kind of over-education. Study too high, and the job position is too low, so the payment is too low as well. And that feed into the problem of inability to pay for the loan. I think that's it.
Yes, I think Dr. Kiatanan also have point on the problem from what to say the university side, but the thing that I want to emphasize as well, we also have the problem on the perspective of the company side. You know that according to the topic that we have mentioned for 2 hours, we're talking about minimum wage. And you know that the easiest way for Thai company to accumulate capital, they're working on such a thing which is so-called labor-intensive sector. You will see that shabu restaurant that you employ maybe 10 or 20 waiter and waitress, and you will see that they work for you for the whole night. You don't need any kind of skill, and yes, you can earn 100,000 baht a night for just only exploit these people. So I have worked as a researcher in Sweden and Copenhagen, in Stockholm and Copenhagen. I mean, what to say, once people in Stockholm and Copenhagen, they decide on to continue their degree, 30% of them also select by their own passion, not for the labor market. Why? Because you know that they have the good safety net. Even if you graduate from the Department of Sociology or History, which is not really met for the demand of the labor market, they can work. And yes, if you have the good human resource system, you can train them to become skillful and match with your own company. Maybe just 2 or 3 months, and you will know that how can you use the people who graduate from the Department of Sociology to working for your company. Even if I have talking with some Norwegian tech company, they design online game, and they have to hire the people who graduate from liberal arts major in philosophy and minor in poetry, something like that. Because if you want to write down the story of the game, you cannot become just a tech guy. You have to become someone who understands the society. You have to know how to narrate the story. So this is the thing that we also have to change in our company side, that if we have the new skill of the new generation of the people, they are good in communication, they understand the society in different way, and how can the new company will trying to adapt themselves and use a new skill. It is also the gap as well, because what to say, Gen X company owner and Boomer company owner, they also expect some skill that from 1980 or 1990s. This is also the gap as well that I want to mention in the education gap.
One of the things that I mentioned was the questions that an investor coming into Thailand would be asking, and one of those was the question of politics and stability. And the conversation goes on after that. Well, actually, you don't have to worry about a coup. You don't have to worry about a government, because it's a very kind of laissez-faire system here, and they will never interfere with with business, it's very business friendly. And taking that further, hopefully to answer your question, despite the fact that they are a laissez-faire government and the previous governments have been as well, I think that what they're doing in terms of helping create jobs and businesses that can accommodate those skills that we were talking about. You mentioned the EEC, and I think the Eastern Economic Corridor is a good example of encouraging with incentives for investment. And we talk about investment, it's not only foreign direct investment, it's also Thai companies investing themselves that can get the benefits of corporate tax breaks for up to 13 years if you are coming in with electric vehicle, with biotech, and those kinds of new industries. So I think they are doing something, but they're really doing it on the basis of encouraging with incentives for business, rather than working with the actual students themselves and the people that are going into the work environment.
I'd also like to add on here, the universities could do a lot more. And Thammasat itself, I once approached Thammasat asking for their career center because I needed to hire fresh graduates who spoke English, and that was it. And they were like, career what? And they eventually sent me off to the English department, and they looked at me like I had 3 heads. Like, you want to hire a university graduate? Why would you ever want to do that? Why are you here? I was like, well, geez, man, I can post an ad, or you got a class of 40 people that are graduating in a month. So just I don't know, some feedback for Thammasat maybe, and then all the other universities. But I'd like to just ask one more question before we conclude. And that is to bring it back to this, political landscape that brought about these changes to begin with. What do you all think with Pheu Thai's push to get the minimum wage to 600? Will it happen first? Will it happen along their timeline by 2027? And second, how about the pacing? Is it too fast? Is it too slow? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if they stay that long, we will see 600 baht, but I'm not sure if they will be able to remain in power that long. There are so many uncertainties that are cooking at the moment, and it all will happen probably by the end of this year until the first quarter of next year. You see some, at least economic figure will show their performance, and I guess it's not going to be a nice one.
Then in that case, I mean, their goal was originally 400 and they've already scaled back. Do you think they'll manage to push that in October or so?
Not across the board. They'll be selective again, but if they stay that long, as I say, by the end of their term, they'll push for that and say, look, we have delivered the promise maybe 48 hours before dissolution, probably. That's my scenario, my best case scenario.
Okay, so if you follow on Thai politics and follow on policy of Mr. Pheu Thai cabinet, you will see that most of their policy is not really success. And one of the flagship policy of them is increasing minimum wage. Okay, so I believe that they really want to make it complete. You will see that if there's a news on changing on the cabinet and Ministry of Labor also in one choice, you will see that now the Ministry of Labor is under Mr. Pipat from Phumchai Thai Party, so not really direct to Pheu Thai Party. If these policies will become still a flagship of Pheu Thai parties, I think yes, maybe they were trying to find the right one to sit on to become the Minister of Labor Affairs, I think. And yes, maybe it will can be done maybe just 6 months as there has been campaign. This is my prediction, and it can be wrong. Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll get to 400, but I don't think the government will last till 600.
Any thoughts on pacing?
I think the pace of 4 years to 600, I think it's at the same pace of Move Forward Party that has been campaigned that the first year is 450 baht. I think it's the same pace, and as I have mentioned in the term of economy, I think it's okay. I think it's okay for 600 baht in 4 years, but in the term of politics, yes, you have to talking with the business side supporter of the Pheu Thai party, and yes, Pheu Thai party still have a good connection with the business side compared to Move Forward party, which is become more mass party. So that's why in the term of politics, the pace may become problematic as well.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. Thank you all for coming, and thank you especially to our panelists. And we hope to see you again.
Okay.